Welcome to MISSIO. This streaming series will help us navigate today's challenges. It's a service of the Pontifical Mission Societies. I'm your host, Don McCrabb, Executive Director of the United States Catholic Mission Association. And I am so happy to welcome our guest for tonight, Janelle Jay. Janelle, welcome.
Hi, Don. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Janelle, it's so good that you're with us tonight. And I was wondering if you could just start us off by saying a word or two about who you are and where you serve.
Okay. So, my name is Janelle Jay. I was born and raised here in Miami, Florida. I did go away to college in the Northeast and I moved down here after college. Um, it's funny the paths and turns that your life takes. I remember coming home and actually started working in missions or volunteering with Amor and Acción. I'm actually the mission coordinator now when I was a junior in high school. And I still remember coming home from mission and being very upset. You know, it's kind of a normal part of the process is having that breakdown when you get back to normal life and wondering,
Sure.
what am I doing with my life? And I was studying business and I was frustrated. And I said, you know what? I have to do something to help. I'm going to, change my major or maybe just go to law school and do something, study political science and psychology. And then life happened and the crash of 2008, and we were in a recession in 2010 when I graduated. And by the grace of God, I ended up working in local government and politics
Okay.
for about 4 years. And a couple of twists and turns later, always still engaged with Amor en Acción. Amor en Acción is a lay missionary community, and I'll tell a little bit about that in a moment. But a couple of twists and turns in life later, and I actually ended up kind of right back where I had always wished to be, which was to be working for Amor en Acción. This is my dream job. If anybody ever
Excellent.
said, if you won the lotto, what would you be doing? This is exactly what I would love to be doing. And so it's a blessing. Every day is a blessing.
Well, it's great that you're with us tonight. I know that you had a recent mission trip and that you actually have some slides that you can share with us to introduce us a little bit to the ministry and mission that you have done.
Sure. Yes, that would be great. So I'm sharing a couple of pictures from last summer, summer of 2019. I actually did go back to the neighborhood. Amor en Acción, we're a lay missionary community from Miami, the Archdiocese, and we work in marginalized areas of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, the northwest of Haiti, which is very difficult to access. Um, so marginalized areas, when we talk about that, it may be marginalized inner city neighborhoods that people may go around but never walk through, and marginalized areas in terms of remote areas where unfortunately, our brothers and sisters are often forgotten. So I've also spent time in marginalized rural areas of the Dominican Republic and Bates, working with Haitian migrant workers and more of a human to human side. This is a picture of me with some of the beautiful little girls, and and in Haiti as well, in very rural areas, whether it be at the top of mountains or very dry, arid places that are just difficult to reach. There is no real road. There's just maybe some gravel or just inaccessible places by moto or car. No car or moto can get you there. So we have to walk. And it can be a 30-minute walk through rivers, or it can be a 3-hour hike up mountains. So that's a little bit about our work or the places where we work.
Right. I think that's so important for us to get a clear sense of some of the experiences that you've had because it really is a journey to get to where you want to go. And so when you're talking about these places that are hard to get to, I mean, they're really hard to get to. I mean, it's hard for us to imagine what it's like.
Hmm. I mean, even for myself, and we'll dive into this later. sometimes I have a little bit of pause about, we're really going up there, you know, and
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be used to it. I'm supposed to, but it doesn't preclude me from feeling the same way too, as a
Sure.
young missionary might feel, or a first time missionary.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, thank you for being with us this evening. I do want to just also thank our viewers for being with us tonight. So, you know, the chat box there on YouTube chat box. So please let us know where you're from. And also, please ask any questions that you might have in that chat box as we continue the conversation with Janelle. You know, Janelle, this pandemic has been a direct or indirect cause of so many difficult experiences. People are experiencing the isolated death of loved ones, weeks of isolation, loss of livelihood, changes in how the kids go to school, and even whether or not we can go to Mass on Sunday. Could you share a little bit about your personal experiences of the pandemic?
Definitely. It's funny, right before the pandemic, actually, as it was just beginning I had been traveling to the Dominican Republic, and I remember being on a plane and seeing someone wearing a mask, like an N95 mask. That was like and I remember just saying to myself, like, okay, that's a little strange. Um, and coming back, I mean, we had gone on that spring trip so we could plan for the summer. So obviously, with all of these grand plans for the summer and thinking that this would be a 2 week, 3 week long inconvenience, right? Um, and then seeing and and just trying to plan for it as being just maybe a couple month long inconvenience, but we'll be back to normal business, or our business of traveling on missions and getting people prepared to go on missions. So I tried as best as I could to keep the routines flowing, just in a different format, which was
Sure.
really great, I think, in terms of our community coming together, um, getting together on Zoom. So there was less of an excuse
Okay.
for people to miss that would have
Right.
normally not made it. And I feel like people really held on to that connection, which was really, really beautiful. And it was helpful even for me in my own growth. I'm especially thankful to my parish that immediately they didn't skip a beat. They started live streaming masses every single day that I was accustomed to going to daily mass. It's like my,
Sure. Sure.
um, or at least I would try to go at least 3 times a week. And now it's such a treat because there's no excuse. I can go 5 days, at least Monday through Friday. There's
Sure.
no excuse. It's always on. And I can set aside those 25, 30 minutes every single day to be nourished and to be ready to take on whatever comes at me that day. Um, so it was interesting in terms of seeing things begin to morph and change, and then to really have everything set in when schools closed. And that's actually one of our primary fundraising mechanisms. So
Sure.
seeing that, the impact on our sister school program, but even more amazing still was to meet with some of the students and to talk to faculty about what they had done even before then, and just see like the impact of my mission here at home and what that has been able to bring about, which I think is really interesting. And I think as missionaries, sometimes we only focus on what we do abroad versus
Right.
what that experience and what we share at home and how that can make a difference. Even if we
Wow.
don't think it does anything. My own parish school had just joined our program, and um, I don't even have the words to explain it. I
Sure.
was just in awe of the fact that I only did one presentation. I probably spent a couple hours with the students, and they ran with it, and it didn't require me following up with them, but they really took it on
Right.
without, feeling, or at least I personally feel like I have to be there. I have to be on top of them. I have to inspire and promote and make sure that they feel that, but that they were able to feel that. And that's an amazing, incredible feeling. And just to see how the spirit works in others, how we can just plant
Right.
a small seed.
Right. So, I mean, that's really important. I think what you're saying, and part of this whole pandemic, we kind of started as, okay, this is an inconvenience, but then it's like, wait a second, we really have to do our mission differently, and we're not as much in control. And yet the spirit continues to move, and incredible things are revealed about people's generosity and desire to stay connected across cultures.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, you know, you had said something earlier about, being on the airplane and you see this person wearing this mask. And I thought of that because that's a perfect segue into our theme for tonight, which is suspicion. So if you recall that experience, were you suspicious of this person wearing the mask on the airplane?
A little bit, a tad bit. I was just thinking, I'm Cuban, so we would say like, "Oh, you're exaggerating." We're used to like kind of minimizing things. So I was a little suspicious of him, and and also I guess now we're learning to cope with this fact that we can only see a person from here up, which I know is normal in the Arab world. But for us to even be accustomed to talk to others, and for it to be okay for us not to see the other person's smile, or to
Right.
I silently laugh. I'm not the kind of person to laugh out loud, but I catch myself now in public making sure that I laugh out loud so someone knows that I laughed.
Sure, sure.
But it's interesting. It's I think it's something we're going to have to learn to live with and learn to cope with.
Right.
But it's been an interesting process, and I'm thankful for Zoom because we can at least see each other fully. That if
That's
we were
right.
in
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
you can't gauge someone's feelings.
Any other images come to mind for you when you think of the word suspicion?
Actually, I have a this was in line with my last summer's mission, and I was worried about so many different things at the time, I think. And I remember having, I think, suspicion as being fear, right? And
Mm,
doubt. That's a little bit, very much so, it can be very much so paralyzing. And I still remember, and in our talking about mission and being comfortable, because that's something that mission usually does make us feel uncomfortable. I've been going to the same neighborhood for 15 years. I remember the first times I went into that neighborhood, I was scared of walking through there by myself. So I kind of have gotten very comfortable in that surrounding. But last summer, we had big mix up. Actually, a couple of emergencies come up, and I had a planned mission to the Bate, which is in the sugarcane fields where the migrant workers, the Haitian migrant workers, live and work. And I had a lot of suspicion, but I think more so fear, and suspicion of where am I going? What am I going to do? What am I even doing here? What can I possibly do? And and not knowing what the conditions were going to be like. And I remember having all of those fears and doubts. Whenever I think of suspicion, it really just it stems from fear, right? Of the unknown. So I remember kind of getting ready to think about going. I was supposed to go for a couple days, and already because my suspicious attitude took over, I had already blocked it in my head and said, you know what? Since the rest of the group isn't coming, that's what happened. The group couldn't come, so I was supposed to continue with another second group. I said, you know what? I'm just going to do a half day over there, and I'm going to come back home. And I remember that I had called our contact at the in the Bate. Her name is Marielo, and I didn't know her. I had come similar to this year. I had gone a few months prior to plan the trip, but I didn't really have enough time to make it to where she lives, and going far out. And I was very suspicious. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go, and I don't know how I feel about staying with someone alone that I don't know. I've never met her, and and I'll never forget picking up the phone and calling her to confirm and say, hey, change of plans. The rest of my group isn't coming. So I'll come and visit. I'll bring the group that's leaving, and I'll head out. And it's funny because I pulled up my notes and my journal, and she said to me, and I was very anxious about it. And she said, ya le dije a Lourdes que tienes la casa de par en par y mi corazón igual. And just in those first moments of speaking with her, it's like everything, that veil that had been put up, that fear
mm,
that I had just dropped. She said, I already told Lourdes, your friend, that you have the house, my house is your house, and you have my heart too. And I
Wow.
said, wow, you
Yeah.
know, like I was coming in with all this fear, and here she is opening her heart, her home. She's never met me. She doesn't know me from somebody else on the street. And here she is opening everything. And speaking to her, she said, you know, if you want to come and stay for a couple of days, yes, come. But if you want to stay until the end of the month, stay. Come, be
Wow.
here with me, accompany me. And I
Wow.
said, wow, like I guess I am going. And everything just fell. Just just all of those fears, all of those doubts, that story I told myself, it just fell away.
That's wonderful story. Yeah. So, do you think, um, I mean, you were on mission and you had
Mhm.
some decisions that you had to adjust your situation because of what has happened. Um, and so it's understandable to be anxious. Do you think the pandemic has fed that sense of doubt and fear and uncertainty, which has made us more suspicious?
I don't want to get too political, but absolutely. I think that from the very beginning, and even when I traveled, my greatest concern in traveling, I was more worried about the people going to Haiti. I had a friend that was traveling on a Haiti delegation trip, and I was worried about his security, not realizing because we had, as a country, I think we had minimized the effects, um, and just saying, oh, that's in China. It's not here. And as time kind of went on, and as we started hearing kind of a different tune, um, was when we started captivating how serious this was. And and then I guess it made me more suspicious. I think having gotten conflicting stories, and I understand the intent behind it, like the initial orders about the masks, and I understand because as a, not to make too much of a generalization, but in our society, in the consumer society, um, where people, unfortunately, and I guess this is something that I feel like we have to learn from others that have less and that are more generous, right? Is that, you know, because there was a fear of people going out and buying masks for themselves and not having enough personal protective equipment for medical personnel, you know, we had to be told a different story so that we
Right.
would not react instinctually, you know, as humans, as Americans, unfortunately.
Right.
um, and I think that all of that contributed to our suspicion of what we
Right.
were being told. I just watched half of The Social Dilemma today, and
Okay.
that made me even more suspicious.
Right.
So I'm glad I didn't
Right.
watch it earlier, because I think that it would have been, it's a little disheartening. But I think that all of those conflicting stories, and still I think that we're still receiving a lot of conflicting information. So that did contribute to that air of not knowing. And even, um, this is another personal anecdote. So at the beginning, I remember in probably about April, my greatest concern is that in Haiti, I'm already afraid of getting sick in Haiti in
Oh,
general,
okay.
because,
Sure.
and actually, I tell the kids this all the time in a presentation. I say, hey, raise your hand if you have a CVS or Walgreens within 5 minutes of your house. If you know that you
Okay.
can go in 5 minutes, and all the kids raise their hands.
Right.
Raise your hand if you have a Walgreens, CVS, hands are all up. Okay, imagine not having that, and that's Haiti. That's
Right.
the
Sure.
neighborhoods we work in. Imagine being in a place where there's a clinic and you don't have a doctor or a nurse, but you have a nurse's assistant
Right.
providing
Right.
medical care. And that's it. You're lucky to have that kind of care there.
Sure. Sure.
And
Yeah.
so in my head, I was just thinking, if this goes to Haiti, it's going to spread like wildfire. And what are we going to do? Like, how do we
Sure.
manage that? And then,
Right.
of course, unfortunately, what's nice is that now, and even in the developing world, they do have a lot of cell phones and access to internet and things and information. We're able to share information through WhatsApp, but they were getting all kinds of crazy misinformation too. I received something that sounded to me, I'm Cuban American, as propaganda in Haiti,
Yes.
saying that, uh, thank you to Cuba because your Cuban doctors had found the cure for corona in China, and it was like an all hail the prevailing ruling
Sure,
party.
sure.
And
Yeah,
there was a lot of suspicion just coming out of the
sure.
woodwork, and I had to kind
Right.
of dispel myths and say, look,
Yeah,
here's what our CDC is saying, here's what I think is appropriate considering your
yeah.
culture and what you have access to.
Janelle, we actually have a question from Hannah, continuing this line of conversation. And so, again, viewers, remember that you can always put a question in the
Yes.
chat box. So she asked, there's so much that gives us doubt during the pandemic. What can we do to help ourselves and others not be suspicious?
That's a great question, because I feel
Yeah,
like I've gone too negative and I don't like that. I think that remaining open, right? I think a lot of fear, and I've been reading a lot of I've been listening to a lot of different sources, and I feel like what I've learned lately is it has a lot to do with the stories that we tell ourselves, right? So we can feel suspicious, but on that same flight where I saw the man with the mask, I also met somebody else who's so kind, and I made an incredible connection there. So
right.
it's just always looking at it from a line of, okay, so acknowledging the fear, but I think it's also important for us to place our hope in the good in humanity and the good that can come out of the situation.
That reminds me of a high school teacher that I had who talked about, fools run in where angels dare not tread. There is a positive dimension to suspicion. We all get those emails or text messages and we say, where's this coming from? I don't want to have anything to do with this because I don't know. And so one of the things I'm hearing you say is, okay, I need to do a couple of things. One, I need to be aware of the story that I'm telling myself. And two, I need to check out the sources of information that I'm getting. One person described this, you were talking a little bit about the social media, and it's like an echo chamber. One person says one thing and another person says another thing, and they start like bouncing off of each other, and it seems to fill up the whole space. Does that resonate with your experience?
Yes, I feel like we're becoming increasingly polarized, and I think that we've jumped down the rabbit hole too quickly. I think that
Yeah,
that's where I think it's important to take a step back and check in with ourselves and check in and get a different perspective on
right,
something. If God would have allowed me, and actually I really do believe it was the Holy Spirit, allowing me and my brain to run and not to think as God does, then I would have been stuck on the human error. I wouldn't
right,
have looked at it from a different aspect, which was absolutely necessary. That her voice for me in that moment was that God knocking and saying, hey, listen to me, just
right.
listen,
Yeah, Holly raises another aspect of this. She says that the lack of integrity, very important word, lack of integrity in our media outlets and government officials helps make us more suspicious.
it fuels it.
What can we do to correct that?
I think check our sources is a key, and I think get information as directly as possible. I worked in government, and I knew better than to read the story in our local paper, because I knew that's not exactly how it unfolded. So sometimes when it comes down to those, at least from the government perspective and what I've dealt with, I would say try to find the minutes, try to read exactly what was said, try to watch that video and gather the context around it, because so often do things get taken out of context.
Right,
And if we just stay very like narrow minded, we miss the rest of it. And sometimes
right,
it's not even so much of a, I'm very visual, so I need to read something myself and gather my
right,
conclusions. So
right,
sometimes
right,
it's not just to listen to someone's perspective, but to read it and to take that time to reach your own conclusions. Because
right.
I think that that's one of the key, I guess, in a practical aspect of what I would say based on my experience in government.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. One of the commentators I heard said, what's really helpful is make sure that you limit yourself to the amount of social media that you're listening to. One person said, listen to the news after, because it's so easy just to get sucked into all of that. And then second, okay, if you've heard something, try and verify it independently. So whether it's Google or looking it up in the news feed or something else, see if you can verify it independently, because a lot of times these stories have their own spin on it. Yeah. So as we're while the time is going really fast,
It is.
how do you bring this sense of mission to this question? I mean, did you experience? I mean, were the people of the Dominican Republic, were they suspicious people? It sounds like they were just so incredibly open and welcoming.
Actually, I have an anecdote on that. My first mission trip, I was 17 years old, and I was a seemingly flighty type of personality. I wouldn't really dig deep or really be super present. And I've always been very self-conscious about myself, like having spent the day out running and playing and feeling disgusting and dirty, um, and going to mass every single day. And I remember finding it striking because when it came time for the sign of peace, every single person, what didn't matter whether they just met you or you've known them for a long time, they came and gave you a hug and a kiss. And it wasn't just to the missionaries, it was to each other. And that welcoming is something that I, I I'm jealous of. I wish we had a little bit more of that here at home. But I'm so thankful for it because that really changed my life and changed my perspective on how I do mission here at home. It's that open and having a friendly smile, and hopefully eventually that person will give me a hug because they
Right,
see that I'm open to it. So I think that that's one thing that I learned from them, and that's a game changer, is to
right,
radiate that, is that openness and positivity.
right. That's really true. And so many times, especially in mission, what we learn is I'm suspicious of this activity because it would be suspicious activity in my culture, but it's not in their culture. And of course, with mission, what we want to do is we want to be with and for people in their culture and not impose our culture on them. Um, Janelle, any scripture passage come to mind for you that speaks to this question of mission or suspicion, how to be open and yet also be rooted in what you know?
Uh, Maybe not exact scripture, but one thing that I think I have a serious love for, it's a book that's written about Mother Teresa. And there's a line where she says, he must have radiated joy.
Yeah, yeah,
And always remembering that Jesus walked around radiating joy with that openness and just said, if they don't want you here, just take the dust off and it's okay.
right,
And I
yeah,
think that radiating that joy and that openness is the best way to combat it. Of course, we do have intuition and instincts, but in always trying to approach it that way. I think
right.
it's important.
That's right. That's really good. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Jenna Lee. We do have a link in the chat about a text that we have at USCMA that kind of talks about this. Father Chris did it for us, and he talked about overriding suspicion. So again, suspicion is a good thing, but when it takes over, when it takes over our trust, our openness, our concern for others, then we have to kind of rein it in, and you might find that helpful. Generally, thank you very much for your time. We have a couple of announcements here as we end our time together tonight. One is we just want to encourage everyone to spread the word about this series. We have a number of more to go. Also, you can see the series that have been recorded, the sessions that have been recorded on the Pontifical Mission Society's USA YouTube channel. So I'd like to encourage everyone to do that. Finally, we're going to be doing a little survey of the folks that have registered for the series, just to get some feedback as to whether or not this is meeting your needs. With that, again, in the chat room, Mother Teresa's quote, we must have radiated joy. Best way to combat suspicion. For all of us at MISSIO, Father Andrew Small, Monica, Andrew Moscato, and all of the team, we're really grateful that you joined us tonight. We have a message from MISSIO that we'd like to share with you now as we conclude our session. God bless.
Thanks.
The world has changed.
El mundo ha cambiado.
Le monde a changé.
Die Welt hat sich verändert.
Y todo parece incierto.
Places have closed.
Kazi imekuwa tofauti.
الحياة اتغيرت.
Las vidas han cambiado.
But let us tell you something.
Une chose qui est sûre, ensemble, partout dans le monde.
We will not go.
저도 니마.
우리는 떠나지 않을 것입니다.
Kami ay naririto.
We are still here.
Estamos aquí.